Hi everyone. What do all these people have in common? They're secreting stuff from glands. So we're going to talk a little bit about glands right now. So epithelial glands are, they can be considered simple organs, which just means they're predominantly made up of just a single type of tissue. So you want to know about the two different types of glands. Glands that secrete their contents, which are hormones, directly into the blood are called endocrine glands, versus glands that secrete their contents into a lumen or a duct are called exocrine glands. So we'll look at exocrine glands in this chapter, where endocrine glands will be studied more in chapter 18 next semester. So let's see. Alright, so let's see, how do I make that go back? Not going in. Let's move it down. Okay, so exocrine glands secrete their substances through ducts. And where's the destination of the stuff coming out of exocrine glands, or secretions? It's usually out onto the surface of the skin or into the lumen of a hollow organ. So the lumen means the middle part, like the space in the middle. So exocrine glands secrete mucus, sweat, oil, earwax, saliva, and digestive enzymes. So when we looked at, say, Bart, he was secreting saliva. He was basically drooling. Not Bart, Homer from The Simpsons. He was secreting saliva. So if you look back here, we've got here, this is sweat, this lady's underarm. We've got earwax, which is cerumen. We've got drool, which is saliva. We've got oil, which is sebum, and another one of sweat. So sweat, two different types of sweat formed by two different glands, really. Okay, so so the way we're going to categorize glands are two different ways. One is how they're structured, and the second is how they do their secreting, how they secrete. So the exocrine glands are either simple or compound, and that is whether or not the ducts are branched. So in a simple gland, the duct doesn't branch. In compound glands, the duct does branch. Then the second part of the categorization is the shape of the secretory portion. So the secretory portion means the part that does the secreting, basically the non-duct part. So tubular glands look tubular in their secretory parts. Acinar glands have rounded secretory parts, like they look more like grapes or like a flask. Tubulo-acinar means it kind of looks a little bit, there's features of both. So this is what they look like, unbranched or simple. So you look here, this is the duct here. This right here is the duct. So if you look at all of these simples, they all just have basically one exit route out. So there's no branching of the duct. There's just one exit out. Even though, say for example, this one has 1, 2, 3 different secretory portions, they all dump into this one common duct. So that's simple. Branched is, it means there are, your compound, I should say, means it's branched. So we've got like 1, 2, 3 different branches dumping into this middle portion, and then the secretion would go out that way. So this, that's how you structurally determine whether they're simple or compound is whether the duct branches, and the other thing is the shape. So tubular shaped secretory portion is called tubular. So this would be simple tubular because it's simple, the duct doesn't branch, and it's tubular because it's tube shaped. And you've got some other categories here you can read about. And then compound tubular is compound because we've got 3 different branches, which is what makes it compound, and it's tubular because these secretory portions are tube shaped. And then acinar looks more rounded, more like a flask or like a grape. So same thing, simple, 1 duct, compound, branch duct. Alright, so stop and think. What is the difference between an endocrine and an exocrine gland? So make sure to pause and quiz yourself on these. Exocrine gland secretes its substance into ducts, which are then released to either the outer surface of the body or to the hollow of a lumen, or the hollow of an organ, which is called the lumen. An endocrine gland secretes hormones, and there are no ducts. It just secretes its hormones, and they just diffuse right into the bloodstream. So what's the difference between simple and compound when referring to an exocrine gland? Just whether or not the ducts are branched. And what's the difference between tubular and acinar? Tubular is tube-shaped. Acinar is flask-shaped or grape-shaped. Okay, so that's the structural differentiation. Now, the functional distinction between them divides glands into merocrine, apocrine, and holocrine. And this has to do with how the secretions are produced from the cell and basically put into the external environment. So, merocrine secretion is the most common manner of secretion. And this may look familiar from Chapter 3, this picture. So what's happening here is in the DNA, you have the template for making a protein. So let's say this is a secretion that has proteins in it. That protein is then made at the ribosomes. It goes to the Golgi complex where it's packaged and processed. And then it gets sent out via these little secretory vesicles, which release their contents at the surface. So that process is called exocytosis. Exo meaning leaving the cell in this case. So no part of the gland is lost or damaged. A second functional categorization of glands is apocrine glands. So what they do is they bud their secretions off through the plasma membrane, producing basically like a vesicle surrounded by cell membrane. So the way they're describing it here is it's sort of the top of the cell breaks off via decapitation, and that leaves a milky, viscous, odorless fluid. So mammary glands secrete in this way. So if you can imagine, this would be the cell of the mammary gland, and then this here would be the secretion, which would be human breast milk. So the third way that we do secreting is via, well, one last thing to mention over here. We'll be learning in Chapter 5 about apocrine sweat glands. And it's a bit of a misnomer. They used to think apocrine sweat glands did their secreting in this apocrine style, but they have later found out that apocrine sweat glands are actually doing their secreting the merocrine way, like that. So when we get to apocrine glands in Chapter 5, you'll already know apocrine glands do not actually secrete in an apocrine way. Holocrine secretions are basically the cell dying, and the cell and its context become and its contents become the secretion. So a sebaceous gland or oil gland is an example of holocrine, because its secretion is released with the remnants of the dead cell. So what they're showing here in the picture that's really important is this. What's happening in this picture? This is cell division. If you are losing entire cells as secretion, then you're going to need to replace them at a pretty fast rate. So that's what this picture here is showing, is a faster rate of mitosis. So cell division, replacing the lost cell, putting a new one out there. Alright, so question for you. Which classification of gland accumulates the secretory product in the cytosol? Then when the cell dies, it is secretion. That is called holocrine. An example of it would be sebum, or your oil-producing glands. Which type of secretion is saliva? That would be merocrine. Alright, that's it for this one. If you have any questions, please ask.